hope to, in the next 15 minutes, convince you that to think very differently about talent, how we nurture talent, how we organize talent, to create the maximum innovative potential. I think, in the two books that I've had the pleasure to write over the past couple of years, that we are undergoing a massive change in the nature of business itself, where the old military hierarchical model of organizing business is highly inappropriate for a knowledge-based creative economy. And that increasingly, the appropriate metaphor for business today is not the old bureaucracy which stifles talent and stifles innovation, but rather the social network, a much more collaborative, dynamic, much more distributed form of innovation and value creation, which we see being essentially undertaken by some of the world's leading enterprises today. Now, I came around to this view starting in 2004. My co-author and I were undertaking a major investigation looking at how the internet was starting to change the nature of business and innovation. And we had a fairly simple question. It was a program funded by many of the world's largest enterprises, multi-million-dollar research program. And we asked the question, well, what is driving competitive advantage in today's global economy? And could the internet, in fact, enable enterprises to be much more agile, much more dynamic, much more innovative than in the past? So we started looking at many of the world's largest enterprises, and we suspected that it would be in those companies, in the world's global companies, that we would find the most dynamic and interesting uses of technology. But that actually is not what we found at all. In fact, what surprised us is that some of the world's most dynamic, successful innovators were not large companies. In fact, they weren't even traditional organizations in any sense. They were these large-scale, massive online collaborations. Collaborations behind, for instance, the encyclopedia Wikipedia, which of course I think many of you in the room will be familiar with. Now here is the interesting thing about Wikipedia. 10 years ago, we wouldn't even have imagined that such a project was possible. But today, Wikipedia, which is almost entirely produced by volunteers over the internet, is 15 times larger than Encyclopedia Britannica, has been translated into 200 different languages, is now one of the world's most visited websites, and it's completely free and open to the world. It is arguably the world's largest repository of free human knowledge that exists. Now, again, what was unique about Wikipedia is that it didn't have a traditional management structure. There was no, masses of employees. In fact, the Wikimedia Foundation, which helped organize the Wikipedia project, has 10 full-time employees. The vast majority of the input, the talent behind this incredible project, was contributed by millions of people around the world, distributed across the internet. People who had a unique source of passion or expertise for a particular topic could go to Wikipedia and participate in helping to shape the encyclopedic entry for that one area that they're highly passionate about. And the fact that you could organize millions of people across the web to create this vast encyclopedic knowledge was highly remarkable. Then we found Linux, the open source software system. Again, many of you have probably heard of Linux. What most of you may not realize is that you use Linux multiple times every single day without even knowing it. Because Linux, the open source software system, is behind 80% of the world's web servers. It's running in thousands of different consumer products, again, often without even knowing it. For instance, you'll find it in the operating system of many BMWs, in Motorola Razrs, and TiVos. It even runs some of Germany's nuclear power plants and air traffic control systems. It has become an incredibly ubiquitous operating system, and yet it started out as an experiment of sorts. It was a young Finnish programmer at the University of Helsinki called Linus Torvalds had developed a new operating system. He posted it on the web and he asked for suggestions. And within a couple of days, a couple of his colleagues had suggested changes to the operating system, and he said, well, here's how we're going to work. I'm happy to accept all your suggestions, but what we have to agree is that we will make those improvements to the operating system available to all future users so that we will keep the code of the operating system free and open source. Well, pretty soon, a couple of suggestions had turned into a couple of hundred, and A couple hundred soon turned into a couple of thousand, and soon there were thousands of programmers around the world collaborating to build this world-class operating system. Now, again, no traditional management structure, no traditional company, no traditional paychecks for the people involved. The people behind Linux were doing it because they believed in free open source software, because they believed that open source was the superior model of creating software. Now, many people say, well, what about the jobs and what about the wealth creation that is so important to our economy? Well, Linux, in fact, does drive an enormous amount of wealth creation. In fact, $50 billion of revenue every single year. The operating system may be free, but all of the technical support, all of the maintenance, all of the consulting, all of the integration into large enterprises creates an enormous amount of value. It may hurt companies like Microsoft who have proprietary software, but it has been enormously important for companies like IBM, Red Hat, and a whole ecosystem of other companies that now use Linux as part of their value proposition. So the question was, if thousands and even millions of people can create a world-class encyclopedia, create a world-class operating system, what else could people create? And the answer was just about anything, that people using the internet as a platform for collaboration could create virtually any modern product in today's economy. It's more difficult with physical products, of course, but within knowledge and tangible digital-based goods, the opportunities were limitless. And you know, what we realize today is that, you know, we started our research in 2004. We published our first book in 2006. At that time, there were 1 billion people on the internet. Today, there are over 2 billion. And if you count mobile phone subscriptions, there are 5 billion people in the world that have access to the internet through their mobile phones. Facebook in 2006 had 100 million people. Today, 600 million people connected to Facebook. In 2006, Twitter had really just emerged on the scene. Today, it is the most ubiquitous network for sharing information in the world. So, you know, the pace of change is incredible, and the kind of capability, I think, is exceptional. You know, the fact that today you can organize a community around any shared goal, any shared objective, virtually anything that you are passionate about, you can find others in the world who share those same passions. You can connect with those people, and those connections can drive either, you know, sources of community and affinity, or potentially world-changing products like an encyclopedia or an operating system.